They were warned not to do it. Radium Springs Cave was off limits. Two Dangerous very one knew it, but two friends thought they could handle it. They believed they were ready. They wanted to be the first to explore the parts of the cave no one had ever seen. But once they went in, they never came back. This is the true story of the Radium Cave disaster. Curiosity, confidence, and a need for adventure led to one of the most haunting cave dives in history. Back in the 1950s, two experienced divers, Murray Anderson and his friend Donald Garou, decided to dive deep into the cave to explore parts no one had ever mapped. They were skilled, confident, and determined to make a name for themselves. But this trip wasn't like their others. The risks were higher, the cave was tighter, and what happened inside that day still gives divers chills. This isn't just a story about diving. It's a story about pushing limits and what can happen when things go terribly wrong. It was a warm Friday morning in the summer of 1955 when Murray Anderson and Donald Garou arrived at Radium Springs in Georgia. The sunlight reflected off the calm, clear water, giving no hint of the darkness that waited below. For months, the two friends had talked about this day. They were finally readier, so they thought to explore the deepest, most dangerous parts of Radium Springs Cave. Their goal? To reach the unmapped section that no one had ever made it to before. They brought everything they thought they needed: diving suits, oxygen tanks, lights, and tools to help them map the cave. But unlike today's divers who use high-tech equipment and follow strict safety rules, Murray and Donald were relying on gear they mostly built themselves, homemade tanks, and cobbled together parts from old hardware stores. Back then, high-quality diving equipment wasn't easy to find, and certainly not cheap. So, like many divers of that time, they had to make do with what they had. Despite the risks, they were excited. This was more than just another dive. It was a chance to make history, to explore the unknown, and maybe even become legends in the diving world. But from the very start, they made choices that would raise eyebrows today. For one, they didn't set a safety line from the surface. That's a lifeline for divers that helps them find their way back out. Without it, getting lost inside a cave like Radium Springs could be a death sentence. Still, they pressed on. The plan was simple: split up inside the cave to cover more ground. That way, they could map more passages and increase their chances of finding the rumored hidden chamber, the one said to be the most beautiful underground room in the world. Of course, this decision came with serious risk. If something went wrong, they wouldn't be able to help each other. Once their gear was on, the two men waded into the spring. The water was cold but crystal clear. When they reached chest deep, they put their regulators in their mouths, took one last look at the surface, and disappeared below. At the bottom of the spring, there was a narrow, half-hidden opening just 3 feet wide, the entrance to the cave. One by one, they squeezed through it and entered the silent, pitch-black world beneath. Inside, the cave was unlike anything they'd ever seen. The walls twisted and turned like a maze. The water grew darker the deeper they went. As planned, they eventually split up and took separate paths, hoping to explore as much of the cave as possible before running low on air. But once they separated, they were completely alone, with no backup, no way to call for help, and no safety line to guide them back. What started as an exciting adventure was slowly turning into something much more dangerous. And they didn't even realize it yet. As Murray and Donald swam deeper into the cave, things quickly started to get worse. The deeper you go, the darker and more disorienting it gets. And without a safety line, even a small mistake could lead to getting completely lost. The two friends had been confident when they went in, but Radium Springs Cave was unlike any place they'd been before. The walls were tight, the passages twisted sharply, and the water was full of tiny particles that made it hard to see. Every move stirred up clouds of silt, turning the water into a thick, dark fog. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. In those conditions, even the best divers can lose their sense of direction. Murray entered a passage that led him toward what he hoped was the hidden chamber, but this was the most dangerous part of the cave. The tunnel narrowed so much that he had to take off his tank, push it ahead of him, and squeeze his body through sideways. He had to inhale just enough to shrink his chest and slide forward, but not so much that he got stuck. It was a terrifying spot. If you panicked or got wedged, there was no going back. At some point in the dive, something went wrong. Maybe Murray got stuck, maybe his tank jammed, or maybe he used up too much air trying to get through. No one knows exactly what happened because he never made it out. Donald, on the other hand, had taken a different route. He didn't find the hidden chamber either. As he explored, he started to feel that something wasn't right. Time was running out. Air was running low. He decided it was time to head back. But in the maze of the cave, without a safety line to guide him, even that was a huge challenge. Luckily, Donald managed to retrace his path barely. He made it out of the cave with only minutes of air left in his tank. But when he reached the surface, Murray wasn't there. Panic set in. Donald called for help, but there wasn't much anyone could do. The cave was too dangerous for a full rescue mission, especially with the limited diving gear available back then. Days later, when rescue divers finally went in, they found Murray's body deep inside the cave, in a tight, narrow tunnel. It looked like he had gotten trapped and had run out of air trying to escape. It was a heartbreaking end to what had started as a dream dive. The accident shocked the diving community. Murray was one of the most experienced divers in the group. If it could happen to him, it could happen to anyone. After that day, Radium Springs Cave was no longer just a diving spot, it became a warning. A reminder that even a small mistake in the wrong place can cost you everything. When the news of Murray Anderson's death spread, it hit the diving community like a wave. He wasn't just another hobbyist. He was experienced, highly trained, and respected. People couldn't believe that someone like Murray, who had been a Navy SEAL and logged over 200 hours of diving, could be lost inside a cave he chose to explore. For Donald, the survivor of the dive, the aftermath was deeply personal and painful. Making it out of that cave alive should have felt like a miracle, but instead, it felt like a burden. He lost a friend of man he admired and trusted, and he couldn't shake the feeling that they'd made the wrong call from the start. They had ignored key safety rules, they'd split up, they didn't run a safety line or follow the rule of thirds for air. Looking back, it all seemed reckless, but at the time, it felt like a bold adventure. After the dive, Donald never went back into Radium Springs. In fact, for years, he stayed away from cave diving altogether. The guilt weighed on him, and the memory of those dark, winding tunnels stayed with him. He rarely spoke about that day, and when he did, he always made it clear he wished things had gone differently. Murray's death became a turning point. Divers who had once idolized him were now rethinking how they approached their own dives. Dive clubs started having tougher conversations about safety. Instructors began including his story in training sessions, not to scare people but to teach them. What happened in Radium Springs wasn't about inexperience. It was about ignoring the rules that exist to keep people alive. The site itself changed too. Authorities closed public access to Radium Springs Cave not long after the incident. Today, it's off limits to recreational divers. Only researchers and specially approved teams are allowed to enter under strict regulations. The cave still draws attention, especially among geologists and scientists, but its legacy is no longer about beauty or mystery. It's about caution. Murray's story also brought new attention to how dangerous cave diving really is. Unlike open water diving, where you can usually surface in an emergency, cave divers have no such option. If something goes wrong, whether it's a light failure, a wrong turn, or running out of air, there's no escape. His story reminded people that bravery doesn't mean pushing the limit without a plan. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is say, "This isn't safe," and turn back. In the years that followed, safety standards across the diving world improved. The rule of thirds for air management became more strictly enforced. Redundant lights and multiple backup systems became common. And one of the biggest changes, no diver, no matter how experienced, is ever encouraged to go into a cave without a guideline. That one simple rule has saved countless lives. For many divers today, especially those just starting out, Murray Anderson's name is more than just part of a cautionary tale. It's a symbol, a reminder that nature doesn't bend to skill or ego, that the Earth's hidden placets, caves, its depths there, not playgrounds. They are unforgiving, mysterious, and demand respect. And so, what started as a daring mission to explore the most beautiful chamber no one had seen ended with a powerful lesson shared across generations of divers. No cave is worth a life. If this story moved you, share it. Someone out there needs to hear it. Subscribe for more true stories from the deep and beyond.